Welcome, Gretchen Heido.
Well, hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you today. And I would love it if you would be willing to turn your cameras on. Because one of the things that happens when you're presenting on a screen is that when you see all of these black boxes, it's not the same energy as it is when you're in the room. And so if you would be willing to do that for me, thank you. I see the popcorn starting here. If you're willing to do it, I really do appreciate it. Like Jill said, my name is Gretchen, and I just really want to thank Jill and Anna and the Be Wise Wellness team for asking me to speak. I'm really glad to be back at Brentag. I did something like this also for the Canada chapter as well. And here's the thing, doing this kind of work with women is important. As Jill said, I'm a leadership coach, I'm a keynote speaker, I'm an author. But at the bottom of it all, I'm a woman just like you. And I've sat in the seat, I've done the work, and I have figured out how to get to that next level of my success, both personally and professionally. And I know what it is to feel like I have a good life, but that it's not enough. And why can't I feel more? Why can't it be more? And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Before I was a coach, I was a publicist. And what it means is that I understand something that most leadership conversations skip or leave out. And it's really about how you're seen and how you see yourself. Because when we take a look at that, that has to do with if you're going to be trusted or not trusted and your own internal and external visibility. And so today I'm going to walk you through a talk that I have titled Becoming Her, the Woman You Never Knew You Could Be. And this conversation starts with me when I'm 4 years old. How many of you have the same picture of you on a horse with a hat somewhere? Your mom has it. The guy went around with the horse in your neighborhood, and it was really weird. Do you guys remember that? Maybe I'm just old, but they used to go around with a horse in your neighborhood, and like you would get on this horse and take a picture. So this is actually in my backyard. I do not live in the country. I grew up in Northern California. Yes, there's horses there, but it wasn't where in my neighborhood. So anyway, this starts in January of 1979. My mom was in labor with my little brother, and she decided that she was going to have a home birth after having a really bad hospital experience with me. And so when she decided to have this home birth, I was 4. Now, being 4, it was a little bit scary to hear everything that was going on. But here's the thing about my mom, she's fearless. Even though she'll tell you that at the time she always felt scared, I never would have guessed it, not for one moment. She was 22 years old when she was pushing out my brother with a midwife and my dad in what would be my brother's room. And now, how many of you have kids? Just raise your hands. People have kids? Yeah. So we know that labor is loud, right? That there's a lot of noise happening when there's labor. And if you're a 4-year-old in the other room, those sounds were kind of scary, right? And so for me, I can remember wanting to go in and see my mom. All 4 of my grandparents were there and they told me that I had to wait. And when I finally was allowed to go in, I looked at my mom and this new little person that looked kind of like a blob to me. And I just asked her, "What is it?" And she looked at me and she said, "Well, what do you think it is? What do you think it is?" And here's the thing, it wasn't that I didn't know that she was pregnant or that she was going to have a baby. It was that I was 4 and I'd never been at a home birth before, and being presented with a baby, it's kind of hard to conceive what that really means when you're a little kid. And so this is where this really starts with the whole becoming her, is that for everyone, we all have rules that we live by. And in our family, there were good questions, bad questions, and stupid questions. And asking what a newborn baby was apparently fell into the bad questions category. Now, today, being who I am, if I had just given birth, I might also think that that's a bad question to ask. Like, you're tired, you don't really want to have to deal with anybody. But as kids, we're always filing away information about how the world works and what we're going to need to stay safe and what's going to keep us on the right side of things. So, this idea of good questions, bad questions, and stupid questions became an unwritten rule that I used to navigate the world. It's the way that I received my like, love, and value. And no one ever told me not to ask questions, but it was learned through trial and error. Ask a question, I got kind of snickered at. Know the answer, I was rewarded. Most rules aren't typically created by the person who's teaching them to you. Think about the rules in your own life. What are they? What are some of the rules that you live by? What are some of those things that you never wrote them down, but they definitely are a rule? Where did you learn them? Did you make them up or were they given to you? Most of the time, rules are passed down from generations and they just become a way of being. We don't usually question the rules. They're just how we are. It's just a part of our life. And in this case, this particular rule about questions came from my grandparents. So this is a picture of me and my Grammy. And they escaped from Hungary back in the 1950s. They were freedom fighters and they were trying to overthrow the communist government. And they had to leave under the cover of night in the snow with the dogs chasing them with the Russians on their tail. And they really were in danger. And for them, the idea that there are good questions, bad questions, and stupid questions was really true because at that time, asking questions for them could get you killed. My grandfather had a counterpart and that person asked questions and he was taken out into the snow and shot. And so I can see where that rule came from. So in our family, none of us ever asked questions because even though they escaped, even though they left their homeland, even though they got to the US, that rule never got updated for them. And it was all part of their operating system. And so while it was necessary for who they were and the way that they lived in that time, it definitely wasn't necessary for a 4-year-old girl who was born in California who didn't have to escape under the cover of night. And so even though it didn't fit who I was or where I was going in life, when you live in a circumstance where certain rules apply, you pick them up. You just pick them up. And so we all have different rules. And I'm going to have something for you at the end for you to be able to figure out what are the rules that you live by? What are some of these things that were unspoken, but that you did pick up? And what happens with rules is that there's always a secondary belief underneath them that reinforces the rule. It's the reason that you do it. So for my grandparents, it was safety. But for me, it was because I knew that in our family, people were on top of things and got more attention and love if they were smart. And if you weren't the smart one in the family, maybe if you were the creative one, not that creative people aren't smart, just in our family, it didn't really count very much. You got more love by being smart. And to be smart, you had to act like you knew the answer. And if you asked questions, it meant that you probably weren't really smart. And so in our family, being smart was a currency. And so I learned this all from that one rule, good questions, bad questions, and stupid questions, that to get my love, like, and value, don't ask questions, be smart. And that was just one thing at 4 years old. And we evolve and we keep growing and we keep creating more rules and ideas and those sorts of things. But here's what happened for me. I stopped asking questions and instead I started performing. I started pretending and I started guessing and reading the room in order to stay on the right side of things and to be loved. And that became a part of my own internal operating system. Let me show you this. So let me just explain this to you. Everybody has an internal operating system. Excuse me. It's made up of your beliefs, your labels, your rules, and your narratives. And on the inside is you. So you're here, you're inside of that triangle. And here's the thing. This pattern can start at any of the angles. It doesn't really matter where, but here's what happens. And I'll just show you with this rules exercise, with the rule that I was talking about. Rule for me, don't ask questions. Belief underneath it, smart people are better. And then the feeling underneath that is love. If you want to be loved, don't ask questions. And to keep it all going, I had this label of good girl. If I were a good girl, I would already know. If I were a smart girl, I would already know. And so our labels and our rules go hand in hand to support each other. The narrative and the story that gets created comes from these things. So let's say for you that you have a belief that on the inside, if anyone really knew who you really were, they wouldn't value you as much. Let's say that there's that internal belief. So then you might have a label that you want to look good. Maybe you're the professional one. Maybe you're the smart one. Maybe you're the one on top of everything. So that would be your label. To keep that going, there would be a rule that says how you have to behave to keep that label, and then the narrative about life. The narrative about how you have to be in order to keep these things. And this isn't something that we're consciously thinking about. It really is our own internal operating system. And like I said, everybody has them. So my internal operating system is bumping up against your internal operating system and somebody else's. And so when we see people in life and even ourselves, part of what happens is we ping in the triangle and we wonder, why am I not getting more? And the truth is because the operating system just hasn't been updated yet. It's really hard to update it if you don't even know that it exists. And so that's what we're going to be looking at today. Um, it's kind of like a computer system that the computer can only do what it's programmed to do. Same thing with your operating system. It can only do what it's programmed to do. And so for you, maybe your mom didn't have a home birth, but I'd be willing to bet that you know what it feels like to ask the wrong question in the wrong room, or to be quiet when you should have said something, to pretend that you already knew something that you didn't. And here's the thing, here's the really funny thing. My entire career as a coach is built on asking questions. So at some point, I had to upgrade so that I could become her, the woman that I really want to be. But before I could do that, I had to understand what I was running on. And just so show of hands so far, because so many of the cameras are off, is this making sense? Are you guys following? Just give me kind of thumbs up, that sort of thing. Okay. Is it interesting? Are you guys like with it? Yeah. Okay. All right. So here is a picture of my little family of four of when I was growing up. And here's some about my childhood. It's the where I came from. And for all of us, when we're looking at our operating system, we have to look at where we came from to see how did this whole thing start in the first place. So my mom was a single mom. These people in the picture, my mom and dad, they split when I was 7. My dad was in the picture, but we didn't all live under the same house after the divorce. My mom worked in factories to make sure that we stayed fed and clothed and could even go to Disneyland sometimes. And there was a lot of love in all of the homes that I grew up in. So I had my mom's house, my dad's house, and my grandparents' house. But there was also a lot of addiction and instability. There was some mental illness, there were some drugs, there were some police that would come and go, there was some jail time, there were different things. And so all of that really shapes your operating system, whatever your circumstances. Your parents didn't have to go to jail or do drugs or have instability, but either way, the way that we are brought up really adds to those narratives and beliefs that we have about ourselves and others, because all of it is about our internal safety and security, like value, love, and belonging. And so these are the things that we begin to learn. And here's the other thing. I was only 7 when they split up, and here's what I had to learn. I went from one home with one set of rules to 3 homes, all of them with a different set of rules. So I had to learn how to shapeshift. And it never really mattered what I thought or what I believed or what I would prefer, because you had to do whatever worked the best in that house. And I can remember my mom saying to me at a very early age, different homes, different rules. And so when you're navigating that and you're little, you're learning how to be in the world. And again, it doesn't have to mean that you had 3 houses or even 2 houses, but we do learn how to navigate in the world. Who do I need to be on the right side of things? Ooh, this is the reaction I got when I did that thing. That taught me this piece of information about who I am internally. Oh, I showed up and I told that joke. Nobody thought it was funny. Well, I guess I'm not a funny person. Oh, I wore that, whatever it is. Nobody liked it. People made fun of me. Maybe I don't have good fashion sense. Maybe I'm not pretty. But we are constantly getting our value from outside sources. And this is what teaches us the way that we are going to be in the world at all times. And so as we grow, our operating systems do expand. They get bigger, just like a child with vocabulary. The words that you say when everybody at 10 months old is kind of speaking Egyptian and no one knows what they're saying, or they can say cat, ma, that sort of thing. It evolves and it grows. And it's the same thing with our rules. When you're little, a lot of the rules are about safety and they're about love and feeling protected. But as we grow, we're in our teens, they become more about the who of who we are and the beliefs that we have about the world. And then we get into our 20s and it becomes something else. And so think of this as something that just it expands. It expands, but it doesn't always update until we do that work. And at the bottom of all of it, if you think of a hierarchy of needs, safety, security, belonging. Those are your ones that are at the bottom. That if you do not have the safety and security, it's really hard to ever get to your like, love, and value. And so that's what we're always looking at. Now, we, you, me, us as women, we all probably have a deep desire for something. It could be to travel, it might be to be an author, maybe it's to get a new job, date a new person, cut our hair, whatever it is. But if it doesn't fit into the operating system, we often won't do it because there's a tension in becoming her. There's a tension in who we are and who we've been taught to be and who we want to be. But who we want to be doesn't have an operating system for that yet. So she's scared. And so that's often why we sit adjacent to the lives that we're really meant to have and that's a lot of times too why we might feel unsatisfied, sometimes lonely, unhappy, restless, is because we're not stepping out. Is this making sense? Okay. Anyone have any questions or comments before I keep going? Something that's hitting you. Okay. I'll keep going. I just wanted to make sure I was trying to look at all of the screen at the same time. So here's me, full-fledged teenager, and by this time I've added a lot more to my identity. I'm having a board meeting here with my mother and my brother, the one who was born in the house. And here's how I saw myself at that time. I'm the good one. I'm the one who takes care of everybody. I'm overly responsible. I'm an expert temperature taker. I'm an eggshell walker. I'm an overachiever. And I'm the one who made sure everyone else was okay. So it's really evolved since 4 years old. And there's a lot more rules that go with it when this is where you've gotten. Now, here's me when I'm leaving for college. I don't know why I'm wearing these sunglasses. I really have no idea what this outfit is about, but there you go. When it was time to go to college, I was terrified. I didn't want to go, but my mom helped me apply. And when I got in, she packed up my things with me and she moved me to the dorms 350 miles away from home. And this was a significant moment in my life because I can remember stepping into becoming her, becoming me, the woman I never knew I could be. And when you're this age, I'm not even necessarily thinking of myself as a woman. I'm still thinking of myself as like young adult, teen, those sorts of things. But with the old operating system that I had and the rules and beliefs and the narratives and the labels, I never thought I'd get there. I never thought I'd end up in college. At this time, my dad had been in and out of jail quite a bit. He'd been homeless quite a bit. And the drug addiction and the police that had been at our house, it was quite a bit. And so it didn't ever feel like a girl like that could end up here, could end up at the dorms, could end up wherever that might be. But because my mom believed it and she knew that there was more for me, she really showed me and helped me with that operating system of becoming her. So even though I was scared, of doing something different, being something different, I moved, and outwardly it felt like things were going to change. But here's the thing with the geographic location move. Nothing changes here. It just changes out there. And so that was one of the first things that I learned, is that, okay, my comforter might be different, the bedroom might be different, those things might be different, but nothing here is different. And so we don't always know how to make it different yet. And that's again because we're trapped into who we've been. But here is where the old operating system got me. I got through college, I did get the degree, I got married, had a condo south of the boulevard in Los Angeles. That's like a big thing. All of that felt like a big deal, okay? I was supposed to feel like I had arrived. I had the car, I had the right clothes, I had a couple of friends. And on the outside, it looked really good, but the inside didn't match. And I felt like I shouldn't want or ask for more, but I did want more. I wanted to feel something. I wanted to feel something different. I wanted my own achievements and accomplishments more than just all of the doing that I'd been able to do. But the problem was the old operating system for all of us just keeps recreating more of the same. So in my operating system, because being smart was really important, achieving was really important, I could do that and that was easy. That was not a problem. But I didn't know how to feel because the rules in our family were, a lot of them were about just don't feel, shove it down. Nobody has time for your feelings. Feelings aren't safe. Don't inconvenience others with your feelings. The feelings we were allowed to have, though, we could be mad, we could be angry, we could be irritable, we could blow off the handle. But if you were sensitive or vulnerable, like you'd get made fun of, you knew not to really show those feelings. And so my outsides weren't matching my insides. And it wasn't that I was ungrateful or even sad. It was just that I felt like I didn't fit. I really knew that something was missing. I knew that I was living this version of life, but I felt like, why is it so empty? Why is it so empty? And it's because the operating system that all of us are living in is perfect for the results that we have in our life. So anything that you have right now, it can definitely be traced back to your current operating system. So I'd achieve, I'd beat the odds, I'd gone out in the world, I could access some of that satisfaction. But that hole in my soul that I was trying to fill up with people, places, and things was never enough. It just was never, ever enough. And I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't even know if you could do anything about it because of the guilt that I felt that, well, I have it all. I have it all. When people would say nice things to me, I felt suspicious. I mean, what did they want from me? Like, what are you trying to get? My own internal narrative wouldn't let any of the good really land. Compliments bounced off of me, achievements evaporated the moment I got them. I can remember getting one achievement and already thinking while I was on the stage receiving the award, well, what's the next thing I'm going to do? Like, oh yeah, that's nice. What's the next thing I'm going to do? So never really letting it go in. I tried to fill myself up with attention, being good, doing more. And here's what I know now that I didn't really know then and that I've coached so many women on. You can have it all and still feel nothing. You can have it all and really find yourself wondering, is this it? Is this it? And I can remember that feeling. Is this it? I mean, it's a good life, but somehow I thought it would feel different. I thought that something would shift. And so this is the work that I do with the clients that I have today. It's not just about your goal line, it's about your soul line. Because you can hit every goal there is and still have the exact feeling that you had when you were a kid, or still keep regenerating the exact feeling that you have now. And your feelings are probably pretty good. You're all working, you're successful at some level, but there's more. And so here's what I learned. It wasn't that there was something that was wrong with me. It was that there was an old code that I hadn't learned how to upgrade yet. And what was happening was I was still running on that old set of rules, the labels and the beliefs, and my old operating system wouldn't let me step into who I knew I was or what I knew to be true because by this time, here's what I knew. I knew I was articulate. I knew I was direct. I was funny. I was kind. I was on point. I was stable. I had integrity. And guess what else I was? I was creative and curious. Now, those were not things that went with that rule book. And the old operating system used to just kick them out. It still wanted to say, oh, no, 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 that's not what you are. You're aggressive. You're smart. You came from the wrong side of the tracks. You don't have the right family. You're not good enough. You're an imposter. And so those rules were running the show. And that's where the struggle was. That's where the tension point was. Is everyone following this? Are you guys understanding what I'm sharing here? Okay, fantastic. So we don't choose our rules. We inherited them. We inherit them from lived experience. They're passed down. Mine came from a family that escaped from a country where asking questions got you killed, from a mom who worked factory floors and who taught me that safety was really everything. From growing up in a house with addiction and chaos. And really taking on the belief that being in charge was better than not, that someone had to be in charge and it wasn't going to be one of those grown-ups, so it might as well be me. And so no wonder I had outgrown this old system. And what I realize about these rules and everything else is that it was wisdom. These were lies, though, about me dressed up as wisdom to keep me safe and to keep me small. And it was the same with the labels. It was the same with all of the identities that I gave to myself. And so I wonder for you, what are some of your labels? What are some of the identities that you've given to yourself? Are you the responsible one? Are you the one that manages? Are you the one that doesn't need help? Are you the one who, always has it together? Are you the procrastinator? Are you the one that's constantly the mess? But here's the deal, no matter what those labels are, they all become a cage. Every single one of them becomes a cage. And underneath that, we have ideas about ourselves. I'm too much, I'm not enough, I have to earn my place, I don't get to rest. And these are the things that we live by, and that creates our life. And so take a minute and just think about it. What are some of your labels? What are some of the beliefs that you have? What are some of the rules that reign in your life? What makes up your cage? And I wonder if anyone's willing to unmute and share something. I'd love to bring some energy in here so it's not just me monotone the whole time telling you a little story. What are you getting for yourself? What are you seeing in this? Anyone willing to share one of your labels?
Overachiever.
Overachiever. Mm-hmm.
I'm a doer.
Yep.
Doer of all the things,
Yes,
Doer of all the
exactly.
things.
not a
And
delegator.
yeah. Okay, so if you're a doer of all the things, then what's the rule?
Do it all.
Do it
You do
all.
it all.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a good one, Emma.
yeah,
Yeah.
do it all.
Yeah.
And
Don't
usually
ask for help.
don't ask for help. And usually underneath that, there's a belief that if you don't do it all, neither will anybody else. And so then if nobody else will, then you'll be let down and somehow you're going to be responsible. So you have to do it all, especially if you want to stay with the label of doer. The rules that go with that, of course, keep you in place. And so then when we feel burnt out, overwhelmed, overdone, taking on too much, the results that we have are perfect for the operating system. And that's why so many of us women, we're burnt out. We're tired. Almost all of us could raise our hand to say that we're the doer or the overachiever or the one who thinks about it. How many of you are tracking everything? You're like the tracker. You track it all, every single detail for everybody. Anyone have that? Yeah.
Me.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I love it. Usually in a room full of women, like everyone is raising their hand or saying me, thumbs upping, yeah, that whole thing, because it's the truth. And that's what makes us tired, but we don't know how to undo that because the operating system says we have to. So if your superwoman cape is on, there's no way to take it off. And that's what I'm going to show you next is like, well, how do we start changing this? How do we change this operating system? What needs to happen to make it different? Does that sound good for us to go there next? Okay. So I wore that Superwoman cape and I climbed, and it's just what I did. And I want to show you what this looked like at work and at home. Think of your own examples as I'm going through it so it can become really crystal clear to you. So in my early 20s, I was an admin assistant. I think all of us end up with one of those jobs at some point. Um, I was so articulate. I had good ideas. At least I thought they were good ideas. And I wasn't shy about sharing my ideas, especially with the VP. I really wanted her to know my ideas. And early 20s, I was probably 19 or 20, something like that. This is not a picture of me at 19 or 20. It's just a placeholder because I can't find one of me at 19 or 20. But I can remember telling this VP one of my ideas, and she dismissed it, and I pushed. And here's what she said: I'm your superior. You're my subordinate. Do not question my authority. Well, that wasn't going to work very well because as the smart one for my operating system and the one who was always in charge, this was a real clash. I also didn't understand anything about corporate dynamics or that, there's a hierarchy and who you're supposed to talk to and who you're not. Today, of course, you're not going to go to the VP when you're the 19-year-old admin and tell them all of your great ideas. It's not the way it works. But I remember being furious because you know what? I felt like she was so condescending. And she was. That was condescending and rude. She could have said it in any other way. And I really wanted to get the control back. I wanted to get the control back. I wanted to be able to show up in a way that felt powerful. I wanted to be the one that was in charge. And the label that came up for me was my intimidation label, because that in my late teens, early 20s, intimidation, manipulation, those were all part of my operating system to look smart. And so, what ended up happening? Instead of having enough, what I want to call it, self-respect to quit, they didn't fire me, they demoted me. Okay. And they demoted me to answering phones. But here's the funniest part. I actually loved it. I loved answering phones because I was so chatty and I was really good at it. And I was really organized. And I felt almost like I was getting one over on them by staying. That was the other thing. So maybe no one has ever said subordinate to you. Maybe it was something that was more subtle, or it was the way that the room went quiet when you spoke, or the way that your idea didn't land the way that you thought it would. But all of us have something underneath that rubs us wrong. Someone says something and it rubs us wrong. And what I know, anytime we are rubbed wrong, that is a clue that you have a chance there to step into becoming her, the version of you that you are supposed to be. So I didn't know it at the time, but this was one of those tension moments of my life of old way of being wasn't working. I didn't really know a new way, so I wanted to use the old tools, but I couldn't get the life that I had hoped for in that way. All right, mid-career, I'm a publicist at the time. I'm in Texas. I'm rolling out a really big PR campaign for a company. It's like $1 million campaign. We're going over it. The whole board is there. So is the exec team. And I was getting their buy-in. I was asking some questions to get their buy-in. One of the gentlemen on the board of execs says, "Oh, well, I'll buy into anything as long as you're wearing that dress." Okay, that's not cool. That's not great. I'm like 30s at this time. And I could feel that piece of me that felt fury, because furious was one of the things that I knew how to feel. Like I could get mad really quick. I also knew I was in a professional setting. And even though I wasn't quite sure what to do with it, I knew that like using bad language or cussing him out or throwing the table over or leaving the room probably wasn't the appropriate response. So instead, what I said is, if we could get back to talking about the outcomes for your $1 million PR campaign, that would be a better way to spend our time than talking about my dress. Would you agree? And that's what I did. Now, it might have not been the thing with the most finesse. It was still a little bit sharp, but even looking back, I'm pretty proud of that 30-year-old self. And that was another moment of becoming her, that the old ways weren't working. Old ways weren't working. I wanted to be able to command a room. I didn't want to have to do it with intimidation or overcompensating, but I also knew that I didn't want to be talked to that way. But I still wasn't sure, like, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? The next one, this is me and my little guy. Now he's 20 now, but here's what happened here. And here's what I know. If you really want to change and your operating system isn't working, something personal has to happen that really rocks your world. So I'd been, 20s, it was I'm your superior, you're my subordinate. 30s, it's I'll do anything as long as you're wearing that dress. I'm beginning to be able to feel some because I have kids at this point, but life still doesn't feel quite the way I think it should. And I'm pretty hard on my kids because people were hard on me. We give what we got. We might do it a little bit better, but if you don't have a new operating system, you're going to do pretty much the same thing. And my husband came to me and he said, "Look, you're way too controlling. Your energy is too big and your standards are too high. These are little kids." And I remember that I didn't really care that he said it. I was like, yeah, yeah, that's nice. Just let me do what I'm going to do with the kids. But then one day, my son, he was in fourth grade, and he came to me. We always had problems with homework. I don't know how many of you have to do homework with children, but fourth grade math, no, I hate that. And it was just a terrible time with homework. And, this kid, he also had some learning challenges and that sort of thing as well. And he was crying and he said, "Mom, I know you love me, but you don't like me. You don't like me. My little sweet fourth grader, you don't like me. And I could feel it. And he wasn't right, but he felt like he was right. And my behavior would show him that he was right, even though that's not what was happening. It was the old operating system. It was the old operating system being mad that he was creative. It was the old operating system that felt like he wouldn't make it in the world because he was too curious, asked too many questions. It was the old operating system that wanted him to be a grown up when he was a fourth grader, just because I had to be a grown up when I was a fourth grader. And that's when I knew things had to change. They really had to change because there was something so much better for me and my whole family. And I didn't want that sweet boy of mine to grow up stunted. I wanted him to become who he really was with all of his gifts and talents, even if no one had ever taught me how to do it. And so it takes what it takes for us to get to where we need to go, and we all have a moment. We all have a moment that leads to change. And that one was for me, that one with my son. And I had had many leading up to it, but I was willing to do anything, to be uncomfortable, to take a real look, to help to make this different in my home. And so I really started to get to work on this. And here's what everything looked like at that point before I could do the upgrade. I was a college graduate, couldn't really feel it. Married, okay. Kids, okay. Master coach. I was on KTLA. I'd written an award-winning book. I'd climbed and climbed and climbed, and all of those things were great. But I really wanted more. I wanted to be softer. I wanted to be kinder. I wanted to be joyful. I wanted to be able to feel. And here's what I know now that I wish I knew then is that there is something called the ACT method. I ended up creating this. It's the awareness of everything that we've talked about today, that, you can't change what you can't see, but I was starting to see it. And most of us are so busy executing, doing, tracking, being, and accomplishing that we never stop to ask, what program is running? What program is this? And what are the rules that I'm living by? Where do these labels come from? Where are those beliefs? And are they true? Do they work for the life that I want today? And for me, the answer was no. They weren't working for the life that I wanted today. And then I had a choice. We all have a choice, and this is the part that no one really tells you about, that once you see your story, it's like, yeah, blah, 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 dad in jail, grew up poor, blah, blah, all the things. Look at, and who cares? Everyone's at fault and nobody's to blame. And what are you going to do about it? Now that you know, what are you going to do about it? We do not have to be our history. We get to be who we want to be. I don't have to be those grandparents that needed to survive. I can be someone else. I don't have to be that boardroom moment where the man's talking about my dress. What story do I want to have run? And so the choice for me became, what's the family that I want to create? What's the life that I wanted to create? I had it all on the outside. Anyone looking in would have thought, Gretchen's got the life. And I did, but not here. And so the choice was to start slowing down. The choice was to start changing my rules. The choice was to start changing the narrative and to really take a look at what that meant. And then the T is the transformation. It's not overnight, but it's about doing it differently. It's about being willing to take up more space in your own world, but in the good ways, not in all of those bad ways, not do more in your world, but take up your own space of what you want in your world. What is this? And so it became the little moments that did the transformation for me. The saying no when I meant no instead of saying yes when I meant no. It meant getting the kid a tutor instead of trying to be the one to do the homework with him and letting that be okay instead of feeling like I should be the one to do it. I went to some therapy. I did some really deep internal work. It became looking at these old stories and really deciding they did not need to be true for me, just like they don't need to be true for you. And just one choice to do it differently can let your whole world transform. So the kid, the closest to the screen, that's the 20-year-old today. That's the little guy who was in the picture whose feelings I hurt, who didn't feel like I liked him. And today we are such good friends. Our family has a great time, and you can see that that is not fake joy on our face. That's not an Instagram photo. That was a real life moment. And to get to feel it, to get to feel it, the softer side that gets to emerge, the more fun-loving, free side that all of us get to be if we decide that we're willing to do the work. And that's how things change. That's how the dynamics shift. You know, this is the book that I wrote. If you want to get the QR code there, you sure can. But here's the thing that happened. On top of that hole in my soul that was always there from the achieving, it changed to being one of purpose. And when I wrote this book, it was really all about the things that we talked about today, the secrets of belonging, the secrets of not feeling good enough, the secrets of the rules that we have, the secrets of the thoughts that we have of the world. I never wanted anyone to know that my 9-year-old said to me, Mom, I know you love me, but you don't like me. That's terrible. That feels disgusting. Like, what kind of a mother are you? What's wrong with you? But it's those secrets. It's the things that we have on the inside that we're holding and we make them become a part of us that it's not really a part of us. It's an old operating system. And so this talks about that transformation. It talks about what to do. And so I knew what had to happen. I had to go first. And in this book, hundreds of women from around the world wrote in their secrets, and so it really became this sisterhood. And what I know is that when we help one woman change and to become something different, to become her, she turns around and she pulls 5 or 6 people with her because women love other people. We want to help. We want to share. I'm willing to tell you the story about how I grew up and the things with my dad and how it was with my mom and things with my kid because we've all been there in some way or not. It doesn't have to be a story of drugs or your kid thinking that you didn't like him, but whatever it is for you, we do get to transform. We do get to do it different. And so when I was 4, I never knew what I would become. My family, they knew that I would succeed, but none of us knew what success really looked like. We knew what it was in Hungary, and for them, success was getting here for escaping communism. And you know what? That was success. But none of us had figured it out in the US of what it meant. And so I followed that goal line for so long, and then I started doing the soul line. And when I think of when I was 25, that newly married woman that I was who felt nothing to who I am now as this 51-year-old, I really can send all of those versions of myself love. Because to become her, I had to do a lot of work. I had to do a lot of work to get here to become the softer side. And today, what I can say is, I've got the marriage, I've got the family, we do the vacations, we have the house, I wrote the book, I did the career, I've done it, but today I can feel it. And even though my life isn't perfect, what I know is this: it goes really fast, it goes in a blink. And so we don't get any do-overs. We get one shot because here goes life, again and again and again. One snapshot to the next snapshot to the next snapshot to the next. And if we don't decide how we want to feel and who we want to be and what we want to give to the world, it's over, and it's over fast. And so for you ladies, I just want you to know, I came from that low income family, from that single mother who worked in factories, who gave me everything that she could. I came from the grandparents who escaped Hungary with rules for survival that they built into my life that I carried into boardrooms. I came from being demoted and dismissed and having someone look at my dress instead of my ideas. And me changing came from that little boy telling me that he didn't feel liked by me. And if I can sit here and tell you all about it and I can do it and make the change, I know that you can do it too. Because the woman that you never knew that you could be, she's not a stranger to you. She's there. She's underneath all of that noise, all of those labels, all of those rules, and all of the beliefs. And she's waiting for you to get to know her. And she's been waiting long enough. And so, my hope for you is that you will do some of this work. Take a moment and scan this QR code, because I have a whole guide for you that's going to walk you through what we talked about. It's going to take you through your own operating system. It's going to help you to start becoming the woman that you were always meant to be.